The variant that I have is particularly wicked because there's no outward manifestation of it, right? Like you're saying, the flicking of the light switch is all going on in here for me. The flicking of the light switch for someone else, you can see that going on. So for someone,
It's always kind of surprising when someone, incredibly successful, someone who's in the public eye all the time, they come out and they talk about the stuff that they're going through, the stuff that maybe we don't see, right? And it makes you think, wow, everyone's got these complexities no matter what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. It really humanizes them in a way.
Totally. And it reminds us that those struggles are real for everyone, no matter who they are. You know what I mean? And that's actually what we're diving into today, something pretty personal about Luke Combs, country music star.
Right, exactly. We're going to be taking a closer look at his experience with Pure O, which is, a form of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay, so Pure O.
Yeah, and he actually opened up about this quite a bit in a recent interview with 60 Minutes Australia, and luckily Men's Journal did a great write-up on it, breaking down everything he talked about.
Awesome. So that's what we're working with here.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're aiming for in this deep dive is to really understand what Pure O is. And we're going to try to do that through Luke Combs' own words, right? And his experiences, alongside kind of the context and the information that Men's Journal provides in that article.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a window into a mental health condition that we don't always see or hear about. So
right, and it's really significant that he's choosing to share something so personal. Someone in his position, it can have a huge impact when they're open about these kinds of things. It can help a lot of people.
For sure. And the article mentions that he's actually been dealing with Pure O since he was 12 years old.
Wow.
Which is that's so young, like that's such a crucial time in your development, and to be facing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in that February interview with 60 Minutes Australia, he even mentioned that he was going through like his worst flare-up in years.
Oh, wow.
And get this, all while he was on tour.
Oh.
Dealing with all the stress and pressure that comes with touring and being in the spotlight,
Yeah, for sure.
It just shows you that mental health, it doesn't take a break, right?
It doesn't care about your schedule.
Exactly.
Or how successful you are.
It's always there. Okay, so let's actually get into like what Pure O feels like from Luke Combs' perspective. He uses some really powerful and clear language to describe it.
Oh, he does, yeah.
So he basically says that the Pure O, it's all about these thoughts that you don't want to have, but they're there, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about this cycle that they create, like a feedback loop.
Oh, yeah.
So you get these unwanted thoughts, and they cause stress, right?
Right.
And then the stress makes you have even more of these thoughts.
It keeps feeding itself.
Totally. And then you're stuck in this loop, like you're confused, you're trying to get rid of these thoughts, but the more you try to fight them off, it's like the stronger they become.
Yeah, that feedback loop, it's something a lot of people experience with intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
The harder you try to push them away, the more your brain thinks, oh, this must be important.
Right. Like it's a sign that we need to pay attention to this.
Exactly.
And so it just makes them come back even stronger.
Yeah, it can be so frustrating.
Totally. And Combs, he highlights something really important about Pure O. It's that it's purely obsessional. Like there aren't those outward visible compulsions that we usually think of when we think of OCD.
Exactly. And that's what he says makes it particularly wicked.
Yeah.
Because there's no outward signs, no behaviors that other people can see and recognize as a struggle.
Right. It's all internal.
Yeah. It's like this invisible battle that you're fighting on your own.
It's a really good way to put it. And he actually just uses one word to describe it, and it's so powerful. Wicked.
Yeah, just wicked. It really captures how distressing and almost tormenting these internal obsessions can be.
Yeah, you can't see it.
Yeah.
So it can be really, really hard for other people to understand what you're going through.
Absolutely.
It's a heavy burden to carry, especially alone.
Yeah. But it's interesting because, despite dealing with this for so long, Combs also says that he feels, lucky in a way.
Lucky?
Yeah, because he's become like an expert on his own condition. He's lived with it for so many years, that he's learned how to how to get out of it when those flare-ups happen.
Okay, that's really amazing.
It is.
You know, it really speaks to the resilience of the human mind, that ability to learn to manage these really, really difficult mental health challenges.
Absolutely. And he gives us a glimpse into just how intense these flare-ups can be. He said that during a bad one, it was like 45 seconds of every minute for weeks.
Wow.
Where these thoughts were just relentless, just bombarding him constantly.
Man, that's hard to even imagine. Just the sheer frequency, you know, how intrusive it is, just taking over everything.
Yeah, it's incredibly debilitating. And you know, to think that someone like Luke Combs, you know, who's so successful, who seems so in control, to think that he's dealing with this, it just shows you how powerful these thoughts can be.
Absolutely. So what does he do? What are some of the strategies that he's learned to manage these kinds of intrusive thoughts?
Well, his main piece of advice is actually pretty simple, but it's really important. He says, don't let your thoughts rule you. And he explains that it's not really about the specific content of the thoughts themselves. It's about, you know, not giving them too much weight, not believing them, or trying to fight them too hard, because that just makes them stronger.
Right.
It's like the more you focus on them, the more power you give them.
Yeah. That's a really important point. It's almost counterintuitive, right?
It is.
Like our first instinct is to analyze the thought, try to figure out why we're having it, how to stop it.
Exactly.
But he's saying that can actually be part of the problem.
It can, yeah.
So what's the alternative?
Well, it's about, you know, learning to kind of observe those thoughts without judgment, without getting caught up in the content. You know, just recognizing them as thoughts, not necessarily truths or reflections of who you are. You know?
Okay. So kind of taking a step back, creating some distance from those thoughts.
Exactly, and that's how you start to weaken their power.
Got it. Now, the Men's Journal article, they also include a definition of pure O from Healthline, and that can give us maybe a little bit more of a clinical perspective on it. So what does Healthline have to say?
So they describe it as individuals who feel compelled to carry out mental rituals in response to distressing, persistent, intrusive thoughts. And they say that those individuals may have pure obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD.
Okay, so those mental rituals, what are they talking about?
So in pure O, these rituals, they happen internally.
Okay.
It might be things like, you know, mentally going over past events, trying to convince yourself that nothing bad happened. Or maybe silently repeating certain words or phrases to try and kind of neutralize the anxiety that the intrusive thought is causing.
Right.
Or even like doing these elaborate thought experiments in your head, trying to logically disprove the thought.
So it's like the mental work, the hidden work, the stuff we do on the inside to try to manage those unwanted thoughts, and that becomes kind of like the compulsive behavior in pure O, right?
Right, exactly. It's that cycle, the intrusive thought, the distress it causes, and then the mental effort to try to get rid of that distress.
Okay, got it.
Right.
And that really connects back to what Luke Combs was talking about, right? About how trying to get rid of the thoughts can actually make them worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a trap almost. And you know, it's amazing that he's so willing to share his experience, because it gives us such valuable insight into this condition that so many people struggle with.
Absolutely. So let's kind of bring this all together, wrap things up.
Yes.
So pure O, it's a form of OCD where the main experience is these distressing, intrusive thoughts, but without those outward compulsions that we often associate with OCD.
All right.
And Luke Combs, who's been dealing with this since he was a kid, he's been so brave to share his story, to talk about how relentless and in his words, how wicked these purely internal obsessions can be.
Yeah, and his advice is so important, you know. Don't let those thoughts rule you. Don't get too caught up in the specific content of the thoughts.
Right.
And the definition from Healthline, it supports that, right?
Yeah.
Talking about those mental rituals that people engage in as a response to these thoughts.
It makes you think, you know, how many people are walking around with these really intense mental struggles that we can't even see.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from Luke Combs' story.
Sure.
It's a reminder to be more empathetic, to be more understanding, because we never really know what someone else is going through internally.
Right. And to remember that the thoughts that pop into our head, they don't always reflect who we are or what we truly believe.
Exactly. And this actually brings up a really interesting question for you, the listener. You know, how often do we judge others based only on what we see on the surface? Luke Combs' story really highlights that the internal world of another person can be so much more complex than we realize. And maybe if we all take some time to think about our own relationship with our thoughts, how we sometimes give power to the thoughts we wish would just go away, maybe that can help us be more understanding and compassionate towards others.
That's a great point. You know, maybe Luke Combs' decision to share his story, it could be a starting point for all of us to be a little more mindful, a little more aware of what's happening both inside ourselves and in the people around us.
Exactly. It's a powerful message.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a conversation that we need to keep having.
For sure, for sure.